Welcome to another episode of the Snap Fantasy Football Podcast, your weekly dose of news and advice that comes to your pocket every single Saturday. Holding it down, here we got Mac, Mark, Scott, and Landon. Enjoy today's show.
Hello, and welcome back to another installment of the Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Here to hit you with another episode, bringing forth some of these top running back rookies. Next in line, we've got Cam Akers of Florida State making his debut as a Los Angeles Ram. Now, there's a lot of conflict here with this pick because we know that this is a team that is now stacking up running backs, some of which may have found their way on your keeper league or your dynasty teams. But looking forth into 2020, there's still a lot to be said about this young man who flashed at Florida State despite the adversity he had on that offense. So to kick things off, before I give my opinion on the slate here, I'll pass it to you, Mackenzie. What are your thoughts on this young player?
Yeah, I think Cam Akers is a truly talented guy. Coming into the NFL, he played a lot of different roles at the high school level, the college level. Like you said, at Florida State, overcame a pretty poor line and not the greatest team there, and still was 1,000-yard plus rusher. In high school, he played quarterback. So I mean, this guy has experienced so much as a football player, and as a truly gifted talent, I think he's right up there with the Jonathan Taylors and the DeAndre Swifts, and certainly the Clyde Edwards-Hilairs of this draft. For me, him coming to the Rams is interesting because there's a lot of speculation in terms of what his role will be. And there's Darrell Henderson, which the Rams spent their third-round pick on last year to get behind Todd Gurley. And there's also Malcolm Brown. So there's like that trio, that mixture. And I think we could really see, not by popular narrative, a committee. I think the way that these guys shake out for me is Henderson's been waiting in line, and they're going to give him his first and second down looks. I do think that one of Henderson's weaknesses is pass catching, so they're really going to rely on Cam Akers to come in and fill that role and maybe ascend to something else. And Malcolm Brown definitely is the best in terms of pass protection and run blocking, and I really think they're going to lean on him and his big frame to do that. So that's the way I see this trio shaking out. I don't know, like Lando, what do you think? Like, these guys spent their first pick in the draft, which was the second round, but they didn't have a first round pick. So the Rams kind of knew that in the second round with their first pick of the draft, they wanted to go out and get a running back and get Cam Akers, and they did. And people think that that's going to lead to immediate use. I mean, do you buy into that, or you think that he's going to fit into this trio?
Man, it's going to be tough. Like, besides maybe Clyde Edwards, he should have the easiest path to relevancy of all these rookie running backs. Darrell Henderson isn't a proven asset. He never got the opportunity. Obviously, they thought that Cam Akers was a talent and a guy that they were targeting. He is a great pass protector. He's such a talented guy. Like, everyone talks about how bad their offensive line was at Florida State. We know that. And thanks to Ray GQ, I got this stat. Their O-line in 2019 were so bad, they were only credited for 2 yards for the entire season. Not 2 yards per carry, 2 yards. This guy was a yards after contact guy. He ran for over 1,000 yards this past year in college, and 904 of those yards were created after contact. So he's one of those guys. He can just bolt through. He doesn't give up. He's an excellent talent. He's a guy that could have hung his head in college, could have transferred out. He didn't. So he's a stand-up guy. And I think with all that being said and his talent, I think that's his chance to get that workhorse role. Scotty, I think you think something different. I don't think he's going to be that guy.
I wouldn't say that I don't think he's going to be that guy. I think that getting involved in this, especially in redrafts, is really for poker players at best. because what you're talking about with the Rams is what I like to call the super committee of fantasy football frustration. You have 3 running backs, all who are young, all who have upside in certain aspects of the game. They're all hungry. Todd Gurley's a distant memory there now. So you're going to have all these guys trying to compete. Now, that might make for some interesting football narratives and, some really fun jockeying for position on the depth chart. But for anybody who tries to actually play this in a fantasy league, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. So the only way I'm even thinking about touching this guy is if he falls deep, deep into the later rounds of the draft, and I'm willing to kind of just throw a chip in and say, this guy's going to emerge and quickly. Because the reality for the 2020 season is that with all 3 of these guys hungry and convinced that they're going to be the starter, I think you're going to see some week-to-week shifting of the percentage of who gets the snaps, who gets third down duties, and then eventually, who becomes the starter. And that could shift week to week. So that just all spells chaos for fantasy owners. And if you start trying to ride that trail for the 2020 season, you're going to probably hit as many busts as you do big games. So I'm hands off unless he just falls absolutely low for a depth play.
Yeah, so I mean, last year when they added Darrell Henderson to this team behind such players as Todd Gurley and Malcolm Brown, they were obviously looking at him from what I remember to be like a Kamara-esque addition to this offense. Obviously, that didn't happen, and if you were to ask me what's going to happen, I think of any of these 3, Henderson's going to fall off the wayside this year. So looking at Cam Akers, obviously this offense is looking to find their new Todd Gurley. When you look at the Rams from 2 years ago, they were that running back dependent team. If you were to ever legitimize the word workhorse, next to that would be a picture of the 2018 Todd Gurley. But right now, with Cam Akers in the picture, Pro Football Focus has him, approximated at like 895 yards with 6 scores. That seems a little bit steep to me, but I just don't think the Rams are that same team from a couple years ago. I still think they have some highly relevant wide receivers that could be booming once again. And, you've got Malcolm Brown there adding the experience and his ability to put the ball in the end zone that he showed last year with those opportunities. So to me, it's a bit of a confusing one here, but I still think Malcolm Brown and then Cam Akers, and then unfortunately for you Darrell Henderson owners, I don't think he is going to be the highlight back this year.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, and I was just going to add a few things here. Like, there's some things that Cam Akers does that I think truly separates him from most. I think, yards after contact, he is certainly one of the best in this draft class, if not one of the best coming into the league, like among active players as well. He's a better pass protector than people give him credit for. And I think that, like myself, I do think Malcolm Brown's going to get that role, which gets him on the field more. But Cam Akers is not incapable of being that guy. And he's very shifty. He's super athletic. Like I said, played quarterback, has played running back, has a good understanding of football, and very shifty. Avoided 74 tackles in his last season at FSU. So this dude is very talented. It's just, I think, a matter of when, not if, for Cam Akers, because I do think that, like Landon said, he has the clearest path out of anybody outside Clyde Edwards here to supplant the number 1 position. It's just a matter of when.
So an interesting question I had, another rookie that landed in arguably a better spot, Keyshawn Vaughn to Tampa Bay. Who would you pick in a regular redraft league, one league, not a keeper league, 1-for-1? Would you prefer Cam Akers or Keyshawn that seemingly has a better opportunity with the better offense with Tom Brady and all those guys?
Keyshawn Vaughn.
Yeah, I would take Vaughn too. For this year anyways.
Right. What about a guy like Kareem Hunt, who is a great pass catcher in Cleveland, won't be the lead back with Nick Chubb? Do you prefer Kareem Hunt or Cam?
I mean, fantasy points per touch last year, Kareem Hunt was like 1.5
Really
in limited work. So I mean, that was one of the best among that stretch. I probably would go Kareem Hunt, but he's gonna have to be efficient. I'm just not sure that Cam Akers gets that workload in the first year. That's my hesitation.
Yep, I agree. Kareem Hunt on that one, Lando.
I'll finally, Sony Michel, a once highly drafted New England Patriot, seemed to just have an inefficient season this past year, is getting pretty neglected. Who would you rather have? The slow and steady, what seemingly seems to be Sony Michel, or Cam Akers?
I'd take Sony Michel.
Yeah,
I think I'm in the same boat as Scott.
as would I. Yeah, I think for redraft purposes, it's Sony. I think you're going to see that immediate, production. But for Dynasty, I'm going to go Cam there.
Sure, of course. And so for everyone watching, for redraft leagues, if you're looking at Cam Akers, we love him and his opportunity, but he might not be the guy that's going to produce right away. Like Scotty says, that trio of headache you might have with the Rams might just taint your perception on Cam.
All right, so obviously Cam Akers, a very talented player. We know he was the first player drafted by the Rams this year, so there is a certain standard that we want him to uphold. My question, and maybe you guys can answer me this on the socials, how many touchdowns will he throw this year, given that he has a background as a quarterback? Leave us your comments, subscribe to our page, find us on social at snap_fantasy, and stay posted to our YouTube channel and social media feeds for the next installment of the Snap Fantasy Podcast. For now, take care.